Hello again. This is Bridge of Stars, number 29. So it's the penultimate session for us because, as I said, I was going to complete the sessions when we got to number 30. So obviously, I've been a bit preoccupied with the best way to get towards this completion. And I've also been preoccupied with various things that are going on in the world. And so, unusual for me, I was kind of pacing up and down my hall today, just kind of trying to get myself in the right space to collate some thoughts together that I feel would be useful for me and hopefully for you as well. So I've often started with a character from the angel script, and I'm just going to do that again. But in order to make a choice, to kind of pull one or find the right one to work with, I did something which was slightly unusual. I have another pack of cards which I was given about a year ago now, which is called the Kabbalah deck. And the Kabbalah deck just has the Hebrew letters in it, the original Hebrew letters in it, plus some cards for the Sephirot on the Tree of Life. So I thought, oh, well, maybe I'll go back to that card today and see what it comes up with in Hebrew. And then that will in turn give me the choice for today's angel script card. And in fact, a Schaefer healing card as well. So that's where I'm going to go with that. Now, before I move into that, I just want to talk about some stuff that's going on that is challenging our perceptions of life and human life in a really big way at the moment. And in particular, two major events that have taken place in the United States of America. One of the events they're trumpeting as an amazingly positive space conquest, that they were always keen to demonstrate their prowess in that area. And of course, the other was, as you may well know, and you certainly should know, the appalling public murder of a black man who had was not even proven to have committed a very minor offence of passing a fake $20 bill. And this murder happened in public and it was videoed. And for me personally, I have not dared to go to watch it. Although some people that especially in the astrological community have said one ought to watch it because one really needs to register how appalling this is, that this should happen in a country which claims to be civilized at this time in history. So we have the event of the murder, and we have the event of a space shuttle going up to the International Space Station. And the Americans haven't done that for since 2011, I think it is. And they haven't put funds into NASA to promote their own space shuttles. So now this is a private venture set up through the agency of Elon Musk, who is very famous, of course, for his Tesla electric motor cars. And Musk has the great ambition to get to Mars. So the Americans want to trumpet that, and they, want to demonstrate what, a great technological nation they are. On the other hand, their policemen are still murdering black men on no pretext at all. Right, so these contrasts are something that we could address, really. Now, back in the 1960s, before he died, Carl Jung said that space exploration is a distraction. And he said it's easier to go to the moon or to Mars than it is to investigate the depths of your own psyche. And this demonstrates this in a way. The depth of our own psyche collectively, and demonstrated here in America, is that we have some kind of innate fear and innate anxiety about that which is described as dark. And the attitude to black people, people of colour, if you want to use that phrase, going back to the slave trade, was that if they were black, then they must come from darkness, and therefore they were of less importance and less value and less spiritual capacity than people who had the white skin, because those must be God's chosen. Why would God have made white people and black people, except that the black people were to be disparaged in some way, kept in chains, abused, used like animals for slave labour? So this innate fear of the dark, of anything that appears to be the other, goes back in our psyche many, many, many generations. And we can possibly even pinpoint some of it historically at the point where various attitudes started to get fixed in religious teachings. For example, perhaps in the Garden of Eden story, where something is evil that we shouldn't know, that we shouldn't have, and that the light would give us some kind of blessing, some kind of understanding, but the dark and the shadows were fearful. This may arise in the human psyche because, of course, when we were living in more basic natural surroundings, the time of darkness, when the sun went down, could be dangerous to us, could be wild animals. So we might want to protect ourselves from stuff that might go on in the dark. But also we know that in very ancient times, shamanistic traditions meant that the shaman wanted to go into the darkness. They wanted to go into the caves so they could get their otherworldly experiences. And those experiences carried forward as we developed more, we became more, quote, civilized, and they became religious practices. And some of them were maintained in early religious projects, even something like Judaism in the first temple was allowing what would be, and encouraging, what would be later described as pagan approaches. But there's a certain turning point, and it's roughly in the region of 600 years BCE. There's a turning point in Judaism, particularly, we know. A certain king, Josiah, comes along and starts expunging all that stuff, and at the same time expunging the feminine, taking the consort of Yahweh out of the temple, burning her statue, because that's pagan. And of course, pagan is associated with darkness, and occultism even nowadays has that slight danger around the word, because occult means not seen, unhidden. It's hidden. It's in the shadows. So at that period in history, there's quite a number of other things going on. The Greeks, before Plato and Socrates and people like that came along, the Greeks had their mystery traditions. They were willing to go into the darkness. Pythagoras goes into the underworld. It's really important to go into the underworld, and this is what Carl Jung says. And Carl Jung's great works talk to us about his own adventures in the underworld, and that if human beings don't go there, then they will always create events on the outside that mirror something that needs to be accepted and visited and integrated. So going into the underworld, as Carl Jung says, we do not become enlightened by calling on beings of light. We become enlightened by going into the dark and exploring our dark consciousness, and then we come to the light. And this is echoed by George Fox, who says, I go through the ocean of darkness to come to the ocean of light. For me personally, the light beings can assist us on that journey. When we go into the dark journey, we ask for beings of light to hold our hand. And sometimes we may go into a dark journey and wonder where the light beings are for us, because it's so intense. So collectively, what's going on, and I know it's all focused on the United States of America, but we can see that they are being a mirror for Western culture, at least. They're being a mirror for possibly for all humanity, except for those indigenous tribes who still know where their towel is. So going into that space will allow us to perhaps deal with and perceive what's going on the outer level, the murder of a black man, the travel to space again. If we can see those as echoes and mirroring reflections of what needs to be dealt with here, then where do we go with it? Where do we go with it then? We have to go to a place of a prayerfulness. And that is the card that's come up today. The Hebrew letter that came up from the Kabbalah deck was Hey. And the angel script card, which I've shown you this one before in this series, is Hey. It's prayer. And prayer is not wishful thinking. It's not hoping for the best. It's not even begging. It's an active process of intentionality and of clearing, of being willing to say, yes, I'm willing to look at this stuff because in my heart, there's a lot of dark stuff. Collectively, there's a lot of dark stuff, and I am part of the collective. I cannot escape from that. So I go in prayerfully, I find the resources, I work with any imagery or guidance that I can meet, and I can say, where can I put my heartfelt intentionality that these matters can be healed? And when we do that soulfully and heartfully and with willing surrender to working in this way, then we come to perhaps some kind of resolution or a window that allows us to experience what is shown as Hey in the healing cards. Boundless joy. And boundless joy takes us forward into a new way of being and doing. Boundless joy after prayer means that we have met with the demons, we have spoken to the demons, we have honoured the demons in our own hearts and said, okay, these things of darkness we acknowledge ours. That's from Prospero in Shakespeare's Tempest. These things of darkness, he says it about Caliban, so he just says it in the singular, this thing of darkness. I acknowledge mine. We acknowledge it. It's not them out there. It's not that dreadful policeman who's committed this murder. He's doing it because the human heart, in some ways, is so wounded and trapped and disengaged from its true potential, its true shining possibilities, that this kind of happening, this kind of event will still come to us and face us and ask us, who are we? What is our existential possibility that we can step into, which will mean that this kind of event will be in the past? And the kind of event or the kind of drive that wants to send men into space to land on an international space station while leaving behind a world which still needs attention because of poverty and pollution and deprivation and abuse, that also needs to be addressed. So this is not to point a finger at any particular nation. It just has happened that it erupts in that nation and that it's telling us something about the collective psyche at this time in history. So I want to close with something very beautiful from the Gita. And this is called The Life of All That Lives. I am the taste of water. I am the light of the sun and the moon. I am the original fragrance of the earth. I am the heat in fire. I am the life of all that lives. Of lights, I am the radiant sun. Among stars, I am the moon. Of bodies of water, I am the ocean. Of immovable things, I am the Himalayas. Of trees, I am the banyan tree. Of weapons, I am the thunderbolt. Among beasts, I am the lion. Of purifiers, I am the wind. Of fishes, I am the shark. Of flowing rivers, I am the Ganges. Of seasons, I am flower-bearing spring. Of secret things, I am silence. Know that all opulent, beautiful, and glorious creations spring from but a spark of my splendour. Stay joyful.